Welcome to Light in the Dark podcast. I am your host, Lady B. Before we get into today's episode, I want to stress the words trigger warning. Topics discussed today may be triggering to some. You have been warned. Also, neither I nor the guest are licensed therapists, psychologists, counselors, etc. If you need a therapist, etc., then please seek a therapist, etc. There is no shame in getting your mental health together. Let me repeat that for the people in the back who did not hear. There is no shame in getting your mental health together. This podcast is about sharing our truths in a positive, safe, judgment free environment. Now, on that note, let's start the show. On today's episode, I will be chatting with Iyanla and we will be discussing church hurt. All right, so what is your first thought when you hear the words church hurt?
When I think of church hurt, I think of times where I've gone to church or I've sought out like fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, to seek counsel. And I've gotten some responses that have left me more like emotionally distraught and confused.
Okay, so describe like one of those confusing answers.
So a confusing answer I got one time was back in 2017. I was just starting out in college. I went to a all Christian college in California, and I remember I had this outfit on. It was like a button-up shirt, and it you could kind of see my shoulders, not like a lot, but just like a little like peak. I think the like fashion term is like cold shoulder. I had a boss on like that, and I remember walking into the registrar's office for like my first day of work as a student worker, and I remember being pulled aside by um, one of the like front desk ladies that works there. She was like one of the administrators, and she said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm fine, everything's good." She said, "Well, can we go outside and talk for a minute?" And I was like, "Okay." We went outside and we sat down and we talked, and she proceeded to tell me about how what I was wearing, was wrong, and how she felt that I did not value myself as like a young woman, and that, as a woman, I need to cover myself up because men are going to be tempted by me, and it's my responsibility as a woman to limit as many temptations as possible. And on one hand, I understood what she was saying, but on another hand, I felt like a disconnect. Like I felt kind of disrespected in essence too, because the outfit I was wearing was in no way provocative. I strategically wear clothes that I know will not be that are more on the modest side. So like a little bit of my shoulder is showing. It kind of reminded me of when I was in high school, and you would wear like a little bit of your shoulder is visible, and you're getting pulled into the office to get dress coded, and it's like, why am I even here? um so it was kind of like another one of those moments, and I felt like I was being like judged based off of what I was wearing in her eyes. I know that she was trying to like recite back to the Bible and make it seem as biblical as possible, but I couldn't help feeling like there was something else going on there too. And I didn't know how to wrap my head around that because the way she phrased it was so nice, and so, her voice was so calm and everything. So I couldn't help but think like, okay, do I take this advice, or, do I have to agree because she's saying so, or, should I have an opinion of my own? I went back and forth for days. Like, okay, I was upset, but then I have like my mom telling me like, don't be upset with her. You probably were doing something wrong anyways, you know?
Oh my
So
God.
it's like, yeah. So it didn't help trying to reach out to my mom in that sense, because it's like I'm trying to seek, counsel and get a second opinion. Like, okay, am I crazy? And then it's like I have my mom assuming like, oh, well, she brought up the Bible, so she has to be right. It was always like a matter of they're right and I'm wrong, especially like in a church, like biblical aspect. Um, it's just like the lack of support, I feel like, from like said church community. I feel like we're all, well, not all of us, but I feel like a lot of us judge and look down on each other. And that's what I felt in that moment with that administrative worker when she told me that, because I know what I was wearing. I had no intention of being immodest or provocative in any way. And, for her to try to judge me under the guise of like a biblical perspective, like, oh, well, the Bible says we're supposed to cover ourselves up. It really hurt. I didn't know what to make of it. I really, really was offended, because it's like, instead of telling me what to do with myself, how about we talk about, men, and how about we teach men, you know, how to conduct themselves where they're not being tempted by any little thing. I mean, my shoulders could have been covered, and I'm sure a guy still could have looked at me one way or the other, or someone else besides her would have found something wrong with what I'm wearing, and saying that, oh, well, as a woman, you need to wear less eyeshadow, you need to do less this and less that. I mean, the list goes on. So that's definitely like a more experience of church hurt that I felt. Just like the main gist being, I feel that people weaponize the Bible in order to impose their personal feelings on you and their judgment, but they use the Bible and its verses and its books to impose judgment and kind of have their will over you in an essence. And I've never understood that. And that's been something that I've really like seen that's extremely prevalent in these more recent years as in adulthood. And like, I don't know why that is. I mean, just going to different churches and being around different people, I've noticed like, okay, a lot of people weaponize the Bible, and they'll read the word, but they'll take that word and they'll twist it to make it more palatable for them, instead of taking it exactly how it is and how I feel God intended us to see and read it, which I don't understand. It causes a lot of disparity in the community, and it's made me not turn away, but it's made me become very, very reserved with who I speak with in regard to Christ, and who I surround myself with, and who I go out of my way to have devotional time with, and who I go to church with. You know, I don't like saying that. I feel guilty because I feel like we all should be able to have a community, but I don't know. These recent years, I've just have not felt that way.
Okay, slow down. Oh, when you first began describing what you went through, my immediate thought was, well, what about men? Because to me, the way she was talking to you was putting all the responsibility on you and not on the men around. And I say that because I remember, see, social media can be good, social media can be bad. But anyway, I remember reading this story about this woman who was sexually assaulted after leaving a party or a club or something like that. And so she decided to wear the exact same clothing she had on the night she was assaulted, which wouldn't they take that into evidence? Anyway, whatever. So what she had on was like a long sleeve shirt. Everything was covered up. Like a long sleeve shirt. It may have been like a long skirt or some pants or something like that. But she was covered up. Everything was covered up. And in a way, it's like, so no one can say that what she was wearing was provocative. It was long sleeves, long pants or whatever. No skin showing. And still she was assaulted. It's like, why do we continue to put the blame on women and be like, oh, well, you must have been wearing the wrong clothing, or your clothing was probably saying, hey, come and get me, or something like that. When in actuality, why don't we put the responsibility on men? Men do not have the right to physically assault someone, to sexually assault someone. No one has the right to do that. And we can't be like, oh, well, it must have been the clothing she was wearing. No, he's responsible for his actions. And I don't understand why society does that. Society tends to put all the blame on women. And actually, so in my mind, I just took it back to Adam, because the first thing out of Adam's mouth when God asked him a question, that woman you gave me, ever since then, women have been blamed for everything. And I don't understand it. I mean, I was agreeing with what you were saying. And to be told that, and people do weaponize the Bible. People who go to church, people who don't go to church. Everyone tends to take one small part or one half of a sentence, take it out of context, and use it to fit their situation and try to either intimidate someone else or, manipulate someone else into doing whatever it is that they want. And it's like, are you serious? But yet it happens every single day. And it's tragic, actually.
It really is. I agree. A portion of my upbringing growing up, in the faith and going to church, I've dealt with that a lot, from friends, family members, professors, at mainly Christian universities. I've dealt with that, and it's very, very prevalent, and it's hard to navigate because then you can respectfully disagree, but you feel like you can't express that because then you're, the common term is wayward child. So, I don't want to be labeled as a wayward child, so I would keep my mouth closed. So it's just really, really restrictive environment.
Did you ever get past what happened, or did you just learn to live with it?
Honestly, a little bit of both. When that first initial instance happened, I of course immediately didn't agree, from a knee-jerk reaction, because I know all this time I've been alive, I have never put myself in a situation where I would have to purposely tempt men. I've never been in a situation where I've had to do that, or that thought hasn't really crossed my mind. Um, I'm more of like an extroverted, introverted person. So like I'd have my friends, but then at the end of the day, I'm going back home to play video games. So like those thoughts like those don't really like cross my mind. Um, I beginning to live with it, I didn't start doing that until my mom, the initial phone call I had with my mom, because I called her really upset and I was like, Mom, this administrator at the school, she told me that what I was wearing, I can't wear. And, she said that I'm tempting men. I'm not, I don't do that. And I was really expecting my mom to have my back. And she was just like, well, you probably were doing something you weren't supposed to anyways, and you need to listen to her. And this is like sight unseen. Like I'm away, like several states away, California, and saying this over the phone, it was just like her almost immediate response to side with this otherwise good Christian woman that's just trying to tell me, give me advice that I'll treasure in the long run without having my back. And that really hurt. That I didn't know what to make of that. It really hurt my feelings, and I was upset with my mom for several days after the fact, because a part of me was like, okay, well, maybe she's right. Maybe I am being rebellious and not wanting to listen. But on the other hand, I was like, well, I know at the end of the day and my intentions and my heart behind the clothes I wear. And I don't have any ill intent with the clothing I'm wearing. So for people to make assumptions based off what I'm wearing, for my mom to make assumptions based off of what I'm wearing and agree, that really hurt. And it shows me that like my mom was doing the same thing that administrative lady was doing. And it's like you try to seek counsel and reach out to other brothers and sisters in Christ, and this like they're turning their nose up at you, and you're just trying to find a sense of like an answer, some sort of answer, some sort of understanding. And it's hard ground to stand on when you don't have that foundation of support and acceptance like we're supposed to. So that really made it difficult with me. So to this day, I still feel like I'm getting over it. Um, have I fully come to terms with it? No, because it just showed me that I don't feel comfortable approaching members like of a Christian community about topics like these, because there's just so many different answers you get, and people are so quick to judge. And I just don't get a sense of like that growth environment, that desire to be better as a joint collective. It's more so when I was at that college, it was the quote that always resonated in my head was who's the better Christian? Who can be the, battle of the Christians? Who can be the better Christian? Who knows the most Bible verses? Who knows the pastor by name and meets up? Because we had a head pastor at our church and everybody knew him. We would go to his house and have dinners and stuff. So it just felt like a one big competition. And I was like, I thought that this was supposed to be an environment judgment free, accepting, loving, supporting. I didn't get any of that from being at a Christian college, and I could not believe that. I feel like I had this idealistic perception of what it would look like and how it would be, and it was far from. And ever since then, I've never really been fully at terms with being a part of a Christian community or church community. I've kind of more kept to myself. I have my pastor that I listen to, and I listen to his sermons online. He's from California. I actually met him when I went to school out there. He's great. I listen to his sermons. I have my devotional time with one or two other friends, and that's enough for me at this moment in time. I've tried to find church communities, but it's just I really want to protect my peace. I really want to treasure and value my relationship with God without external factors like people when they're negative and unnecessary opinions. I really try to like protect that space. So I've been struggling with that ever since that day.
I still couldn't get over the mother part. So after everything you said, my mind is still there because I'm like, but a mother would know her child. And so therefore a mother would know what her child is wearing because you've been around this child her whole entire life. So therefore you know what clothing she wears and what clothing she doesn't wear. And so to immediately be on the side of the adult um who in a way was trying to reprimand you for something that I feel like you did not need to be reprimanded for. Um that blows my mind actually. And so I was still stuck on that. Sorry. Um yeah, okay. Anyway, I just need to get that out. So, okay, so my next question would have been how did that impact your life? But I think you've also answered that question because now it feels like what you thought the Christian community, quote unquote Christian community, um, would be like, it wound up being a letdown. Like the actual experience of it wound up being a letdown. Because now it's like, okay, well, it seems like the people who you were around, the quote unquote Christians in the Christian college, were just like quote unquote the world and the same things that the world was out here doing, which is weaponizing the Bible as well, they were also doing at the school. And, having competitions, out here in the world, competitions that really don't mean nothing. They were also doing it at the school. I mean, they just pretty much was doing the same thing. They just slapped the Christian name on it. It was like, hey, we're better than the world. And no, you're really not. You're doing the same thing that the world is doing. You're being judgmental. Same thing the world is doing. You're being competitive. Same thing the world is doing. There was no difference.
Oh, yeah, I agree. That's how I felt that whole time I was there. I really, when I applied there, and I was so excited when I got accepted right out of high school, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna be around other Christians like me, and I'm gonna learn so much, and it's gonna be so great. I'm so excited. When I got there, it really was a letdown, unfortunately, and it really broke my heart because I really craved to have that community, like other Christians and reading the Bible together and going to church every Sunday together. Like I really look forward to having friends in Christ that I could, have lifelong relationships with. And that experience was like the furthest thing from what I had envisioned. And it was really disheartening to be in that situation. I only stayed at that school for a semester and I had to like move back home because I just couldn't deal with it. There were instances of racism and as well as other prejudice that I really was not, again, expecting from a Christian college. I could not believe it. I thought that I could just leave everything at the door and it'd be fine. There was so many other aspects that I had to deal with. I had to deal with sexism, racism, there was prejudice, other types of prejudice, and it was just insane that I was like, am I really dealing with this at a Christian college? Like, really? I thought this was supposed to be my escape. That's really why I sought out that college is my escape. Like you said, from the world. I really wanted that to be my island where I could be myself and take this journey, the pathway of Christ likeness is what we would say over there, or sanctification. And it was not. There's so many times I would go to my dorm and cry because I thought something was wrong with me, or I thought that I wasn't as good enough. I wasn't a good Christian enough, quote unquote. And so it was just really a struggle being there.
You were basically out in the world. They just slapped the Christian name on the school, but they was doing the same thing that the world was doing. And I keep saying the world because Christians are supposed to be different from everyone else in the world.
Exactly.
But in all honesty, we're not. In some aspects, we are, but for the most part, I feel like we're not. And we like to use the word, "Oh, I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian," to make it seem like we're better than someone else. But then it's like when you really look at these Christians or some of these Christians and look at how they're actually living their lives, it's like, okay, so I can be out here in the world doing what I'm doing because you're a Christian and you're still doing what I'm doing. So why would I change? It just makes no sense to me that some people actually go around claiming, "Oh, I'm a Christian, be the first person in church, every Sunday, got the little church hat on, the nice little suits. I don't know if women still wear church hats, but the nice little suits. And the moment they get outside, they cussing somebody out.
Mm-hmm. About to run somebody over in the parking lot.
Yeah, you was just in the club last night. Like, but I mean, oh my God. Okay, so many places to go with that. But that's just it though. People are always looking. And that was something that I was told a few years ago, that no matter what, people are always looking at you, even when you think that they're not. And so it's like to go around boasting, "Oh, I'm a Christian," and yet you're in the club every Friday night, every Saturday night, getting drunk out your mind. But yet, you're telling these people, "Oh, I'm a Christian. Well, why would they want to change their habits, their lifestyle, when you're doing the same thing that they're doing? It just makes no sense to me. And so I don't go around boasting, "Oh, I'm a Christian. I just can't really see myself doing it, even though I know that, okay, people are watching. And yeah, I don't do everything perfectly. No one does. But it's like, I'm trying to do things differently than what I did before because now I know better. And now I'm making a choice. And it's actually a choice. I don't know, man. Some people I just don't understand because, to actually be a Christian, it's like you want people to go towards Christ. But for people to do that, people are watching to see what it is that you're doing. And if you're doing something that makes them want to change what they're doing, then by all means, keep doing what you're doing. But if you're doing the exact same thing that they're doing, they're not going to stop what they're doing because you haven't stopped what you're doing.
I agree. My therapist has actually mentioned something like that really similarly to me, because I had asked her about how do I present Christ in a way, like being a fisher of men is the term that we use. And I had asked her, I was like, well, how do I be a fisher of men, but not in a way that's pushy, that's judgmental, like the way that we've seen on the news and when we go outside. I don't want to be like the pushy Christian that beats over the head with the Bible. But it's like, I do also want to tell you how amazing God is, but how do I do that in a way that's with love and respect? And she said, lead by example. And that really stuck with me. I was like, what do you mean lead by example? Do I need to have my Bible open, where they can see me? What do I do? And she said, she said, no. What you do is you keep doing everything you're doing. You say you get up and you pray every morning, right? I was like, I do. Get up and pray every morning, pray over your food, just lead a life that is as close to Christ likeness as you can, and just to lead by example. And that she said that those people who want to, like you said, want to change and want to be better, they will follow your example. And so that's what I do actively in my day-to-day life. Whenever people ask me, they'll ask me to pray with them, I get excited. A perfect example, my boyfriend, he loves when I pray over the food, and I just naturally did that growing. That's something I always do. I pray when I get in the car before I leave, I pray when I wake up, and I pray when I'm about to eat, a meal, and he would see me do that. He was like, "Oh, you're not going to pray for the rest of the table, or I want you to pray with me." And I was like, "Okay." So I take his hand. And one time I was about to eat and I hadn't prayed yet. He looked at me, he said, "You're not going to pray yet." I said, "Oh, okay, sorry. I was getting pouring my lemonade. I'll pray. I could just give me a second." And so I didn't realize that just me praying and just doing my own thing and leading by example, that it I did rub off on my boyfriend, and he loves hearing me pray and praying over the food. It's a habit. And it's like he beats me to the punch sometimes. So I ask him, he's like, "Oh, are you gonna pray? Go ahead and pray." Like he'll tell me. I'm like, "Okay, okay." So that when my therapist said that, I was like, "Okay, this makes a lot of sense." And if more people had this mindset, I feel like there'd be a lot less issues with what I'm dealing with now, with the community being judgmental and, turning their nose up at me. I feel like that would be a lot less prevalent if, like my therapist said, we would lead by example and bring people to Christ with love and respect and not judgment and condemnation.
See, I feel like we're gonna need a part two. Um, because now, I feel like, okay, well, you throwing facts and you throwing some knowledge out here. So I feel like we're gonna need a part two. Oh, because church hurt and what goes on in church is something that people really don't talk about. People can go to the same church for 20 years and don't really grow in that church, but they continue to go because, oh, I've gone to this church my whole entire life. But I think now it's time to get out of that habit, and that's pretty much what it is. It's a habit. But I think we're gonna end this one though. But I do think that we do need a part two.
I second that notion. I definitely think we need a part two because church hurt is such a loaded topic and there's so many aspects
Yes.
that have to be covered, as far as creating a safe space for people to talk about, like things like, okay, I heard about this thing in church, but I don't necessarily agree with this, who do I talk to? We don't have that outlet. And I feel like that's why church hurt is so prevalent. We don't have that safe space and that outlet to have our opinion of our own.
It's true. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this one though.
Yay!
This has been another episode of Light in the Dark podcast. I'm your host, Lady B, and today's guest I had on was Iyanla. And on that note, we're gonna say deuces.
Peace.
Till next time.